We have 4 children. We have 3 sons and a daughter. All 3 of our sons were born with hemophilia. I had a grandfather who had hemophilia, but he lived to be in his 70s. I really didn't know a lot about hemophilia. And to be honest, when Ricky was born, I had him tested because my mom asked me to. When he came back as a hemophiliac, I was told, well, you don't have to worry. There's usually only one in a family. And then we had Robert, and Robert also had hemophilia. And again, we were told that's just a fluke. When we had Randy, we decided not to have any more. And, God was gracious and gave us our daughter. When the boys were 6, 7, and 8, they were diagnosed with HIV due to the medication they take for their hemophilia. Our oldest son, Ricky, died when he was 15. My second son died when he was 22. And Randy is still alive and well. He's 36. And I don't know why. He was actually the first diagnosed. I don't know if it's because his immune system was better. I don't know if it was because he was younger and had received less medication. We really don't know. When we first found out that Randy was HIV positive, this was in the late 80s, 86, 87, when not a lot was known. The other 2 boys were being tested, and when they came back positive, and my husband and my daughter and I did not, it was a scary time because we didn't know a whole lot. We figured, to be honest, that our 3 boys would be dead in a year or 2. We didn't know what to expect or what to do. We also wanted to protect other kids, so we went and talked to the school board and we told them, and things just really got out of proportion. And I think a lot of that was because of the fear. It could have been anybody's kids, but they were afraid, and they were trying to protect their children. So they didn't want our kids in school. And, by this time, we had been educated by Dr. Mark Magenheim at the health department in Sarasota, and we ended up going to federal court for the rights for the children to go to school. They let my daughter go, but they wouldn't let the boys. During this time period, we were still living in Arcadia, and there was a lot of people still very afraid. There were, community meetings that were being held to try to figure out what to do. And during these meetings, a lot of times, people tend to get very heated. It's almost like a mob mentality. But on this one certain night, we had left and we went to my sister-in-law's home to stay, and our home was set on fire. Our my brother-in-law, his brother, Andy, was actually in the home in the back bedroom. I don't think whoever did it knew he was there. I don't necessarily believe that it was somebody in our community, because by this time our story was, national news. Mm-hmm. It really turned into be a positive. It forced us to, step forward and to continue educating and to continue moving forward. We moved to Sarasota, and the school in Sarasota was very inviting. They took the kids in without any trouble at all. Once that happened, we went to federal court. We did sue the blood companies for their part in what happened. We did win. A lot of people, they saw Ray's win $1 million. Well, that was true. But all of the attorney's fees, the cost, all of that came out. So it was really very little money. And it wasn't really done for the money to begin with. It was so that other people would understand that there was a problem.
Yeah, but they need to know that we as parents didn't get our hands on any of the money. The money was for the boys and went into an account. That's a law that you cannot sue on behalf of a minor and then just take their money and do what you want with it. It's given to them when they turn of age.
The pharmaceutical companies knew quite a while back that there was a problem. They had internal memos, and they didn't do anything about it. They continued their same practice of collecting blood, making the medication the same. And even after they were finally forced to make a stand and say, yes, there's a problem, a lot of that factor that was pulled off the shelves was sold to third world countries.
They turn around and sold quite a bit to Japan. Blood companies had to settle up for $400,000 a person in Japan and take care of their medical bills the rest of their lives. So what we got from the blood companies was a drop in a bucket compared to what Japan got.
There's no love lost between our family, probably really between the hemophilia community and the pharmaceutical companies. They did very little to protect this community, and I think that that's really a shame.
National Hemophilia Foundation called us and wanted to put Ricky's name on a hemophilia bill. Well, the bill they had, they wanted to tax the blood companies in order to get the money. Well, I didn't go with that because once you're paying for something, you don't have to pay again. Everybody who had a lawsuit against the blood companies would have lost out because it would have been a double jeopardy type thing. We're already paying, why are we paying again? And they told me I didn't know much about politics. I told them, I said, that may not be, but I will have a bill, a hemophilia bill, if that's what the hemophiliacs want. So I met with Porter Goss, who was the congressman out of Sanibel Island, and told him what I wanted. And he was like, okay, it sounds good. He put the bill together, and we looked it over and went with it.
By the time that the Ricky Ray bill started rolling, so to speak, my oldest son, Ricky, had already passed away. And they had asked if we would mind using his name. Cliff and I discussed it, and we did allow them to do that. That bill was not something to honor our son, although it did. It was to help our that community and to make sure that that community was taken care of. The Ricky Ray bill compensated either the hemophiliac person themselves, the spouse who contracted the disease, and any child that was born into that union who was born HIV positive. Those three elements each received $100,000 from the government. A lot of them use well over $100,000 a year just in medication. So it was really just a drop in the bucket, but it did show that they owned up to some of the things that happened. And I think sometimes taking ownership means more than the monetary value, especially to a community. But we soon learned that a lot of bills get passed, but they don't necessarily get funded. So then we had to start with trying to get the funding. And initially, they only wanted to fund like a third of the money. And, we had to say no. And looking back, I remember thinking, how can we be telling them no to something like, I think it was $250 million? But that wasn't enough. It had to be the $750 million in order to cover everybody.
That's right.
And so that came about before my second son, Robert, died. Because I do remember calling, and I was almost hysterical. Robert was in the hospital, and we knew he wasn't going to make it. And I told him, I said, my oldest son died, and his name is on the bill. Does my second son have to die in order for you guys to realize that this bill needs to be funded? The cries of a parent go a long way. You can hear from senators and congressmen and lobbyists, but we've learned that when real people go to the government and they lobby as individuals, it goes a whole lot further.
Yeah.
There is a difference between the Ryan White Act and the Ricky Ray bill. The Ryan White Act was money that is still in circulation today that helps across the board anybody who has HIV. It was HIV people in general. The Ricky Ray bill was very specific to only the hemophilia community. In the 80s, the gay community was looked at as a dredge on society. It was okay as long as it was the gay community. It didn't really matter. One of the things that we heard was, it's God's curse on the homosexual community.
No.
This is a disease. It's not a curse. It doesn't matter at this point how a person contracted HIV. The disease is there, and it has to be treated. It's no different than any other illness.
Right. I'm going to say, I think that if it wasn't for the gay community, that my family would be in worse condition than they were. It was the gay community that stepped up and got behind us when we were down and out. When we had nowhere to live, it was the gay community that found us somewhere to live. Our religious beliefs and the friends we made in the gay community had to go hand in hand. We still love them and care about every one of them that stepped forward and helped us.
I do believe that without God in our lives, I'm not sure either one of us would be sitting here.
Sure.
I have so many people say, how can you do what you do? Don't you ever want a normal life? And my response always is, my life is normal. I don't know anything different. And I do think that God never gives you more than you can handle. He's always there. And even when you feel like your knees are dragging, He's going to carry you. And He's carried us many, many times over the last 20 some odd years.
30.
And I'm sure He's going to carry, well, it's been 30 years, you're right. And He's going to continue to carry us. And I'm just thankful that America in general has finally understood that HIV is not a curse from God. It's a disease that humanity has, and we need to treat each person as if they are a human.
That's right.
And we need to love them and take care of them.
I think that's what America embraced was the children.
I'm not sure if it had been the adults standing up, if America would have even listened. So many times the kids were referred to as innocent victims. And I remember my son saying one time, I'm not a victim. And I refuse to be a victim. And I think those kids had such an inner strength. Adults sometimes are so afraid to say what they think, or afraid of what society's going to think, that they don't do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are amazing. They don't have that fear.
Right.
And so they're able to do what's right and to say what's right, whether somebody likes it or not. It wasn't just something that affects the people who have HIV. It affected the families. A lot of the couples, their marriages did not survive. I think moms sometimes are a little more able to talk about it. The fathers, not so much.
Well,
and I think...
Speaking of the fathers, I mean, I'm a prime example.
Thank you.
There was always some kind of group for mothers and groups for this mother and group for that mother. And there's very few fathers that hung around. Most of them bailed when they found out about their kids. I'm one of them that stayed. And it was tough on me because I couldn't fix what needed to be fixed. And that's a terrible feeling. I mean, I've lost 2 children. I'm suffering mentally from it all. I've tried to commit suicide a couple of times because I felt like I needed to be with my children. Someone had to be over there to take care of them. Maybe that's why God hasn't taken my 3rd one, because I don't know if I could stand to watch another one go out that way.
I think without the hemophilia community, it would have taken a long time for HIV to get medications that it needed, for people to understand that they weren't contagious to them, to be around, to touch, to hug, to be in the same room with, to cut their hair, to serve them in a restaurant. It just shows you that a small group of people can make a huge impact. It's like a pebble. Pebble's very tiny. We managed to cause that ripple effect that affected everybody who's ever been infected with HIV.